All right, Tom, why is accessibility the next big opportunity in real estate?
Yeah, one of the biggest things I think in real estate is that you don't want to be a commodity. Every time you're doing a listing presentation or you're talking to a buyer, what's your value proposition? Why you as versus somebody else? And if you're just, middle of the road, there is no difference. I mean, there's a lot of realtors out there. You can go to anyone you want to.
Right.
But you have to have something that differentiates yourself. An interesting thought was, way back when, before the Great Recession, when people were buying houses left and right, I used to talk to the builders about differentiating themselves to not become a commodity builder. And one of the things I would say is, look, if you'll put like 1% of your division into universal design, I'll pre-sell it for you.
Right.
You won't even have to advertise it. And they could sell anything, they didn't care. But when the recession hit and builders were going out of business, I actually had some builders come back to me and want to talk about universal design, how to be different than everybody else. Well, it's the same thing right now in real estate. Real estate's real estate, but if you look at our changing world, I mean, our population is aging. There are 85 million baby boomers, 10,000 turning 65 every single day. And I think we've used this statistic before, by 2030, the population over 65 will be greater than the population under 15 for the first time ever.
Right.
So accessibility is going to become more of an issue. I mean, with aging comes issues, mobility issues. Your life is changing. Also the fact that, demographically, the world of disability has changed significantly, and it's changing every day. People aren't using the old socioeconomic vision of, disabled people not being able to contribute to society. Big tech companies now are realizing what an asset it is. These people have money, they're buying houses, and they're looking for somebody that's not like everybody else.
Right. So when we got into this, one of the failing points for people with disabilities and who needed accessibility was the fact that the system didn't have a way to highlight accessibility.
Right.
And it's changed. That's one of our bragging points, which has been so fun, is that we worked with the Northwest Multiple,
yep,
and we added accessibility into the system now. So when someone's listing a property, they can list the bedroom count, the bathroom count, the square footage count, the school district, and all that information. And now they can add a series of accessibility features, which means now that those accessibility features have value.
Yeah.
And we're finding that as we talk to the appraisers, and now we're getting into the lenders to talk about the value of accessibility. And now when someone's searching for a property and they're looking for accessibility in the state of Washington and soon in the state of Ohio, they can find it. So it gives the real estate professionals that are selling houses a leg up.
Yeah.
If they know accessibility. And when you talk about statistics, we know 1 in 4 people in this country have some kind of a mobility need. So it's not us and them, it's us.
Yes.
Because I am in a wheelchair. I use a manual wheelchair. And the people who think that it's just me have missed the fact that I have a family.
Right.
And that I've got parents and I've got friends. So in just me alone, accessibility impacts more than just one. It impacts the many.
Yep.
So for a real estate professional, especially an agent, who's looking to differentiate themselves from everybody else, when they walk into that listing appointment and they put that accessibility form down on the table and say, well, we should also be looking at accessibility both for the sale of your property as well as for searching for your next property because, eventually you might need it. That gives them a power play that all those realtors that came in and didn't talk about accessibility don't have.
Yeah. Yeah, and you bring up a really important point. I think that use an example. I used to say, if McDonald's in one of their ads shows a little kid in a wheelchair, They're not advertising that little kid in the wheelchair. Right. They're advertising to brothers and sisters and moms, dads, aunts, uncles, friends,
Grandparents.
That's who that impacts. So, it's not the person. It's the community around that person and everybody that affects. So the number actually of 1 in 4 is more like about 3.8 out of 4.
Yeah, right. Well, plus accessibility isn't, there are not very many turnkey accessible properties.
Right.
And even if there is a turnkey accessible property, it might not be accessible for everybody. So because accessibility is relative, my house is totally wheelchair accessible for me. For one, it's not ADA compliant because I didn't build it for the ADA. I built it for Barry.
Right.
And two, my friends in power wheelchairs, they can come into the front door and they can get in the living space, but they can't get in the bathroom.
Yeah.
So even if a turnkey accessible home is out there, that isn't necessarily accessible for everybody. So terminology that we use is accessible, which is questionably acceptable for the entire masses. There's adaptable, which is what we use more than anything.
Yeah.
Because there are more adaptable properties out there than there are accessible. So when I'm looking for a client who has accessibility needs, we're looking for a property that actually has the feature set to be able to be made accessible for their needs. Then really we are looking for an accessible property. So adaptable properties are probably in the 80 to 90% of what we're looking for when we're searching for properties. And then there's visitable, which we talk about as a property that's accessible enough for somebody to come visit, but not necessarily stay. I was actually thinking about your house. Yeah, your house is visitable for me. I can get in the garage, I can hang out down there, but you don't want me in the house.
No.
So, no, you've got it set up so I can come visit. So true visitability is entrance, living space, bathroom. So yours isn't even visitable.
Yeah,
you just said,
I use the example. I child-proofed my house, but somehow those little nippers keep getting in. So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you've got enough grandchildren now. So the value of accessibility, the opportunity for realtors in the accessibility world is massive because it impacts everybody.
Yeah.
It's not just them anymore like it had been looked at before. So
and we've said this before too, life's a spectrum.
Oh yeah.
And what you are today is going to be what you are tomorrow.
Right. And it's not just about disability. It's about accessibility.
Yeah.
It's about who needs the access to that property. And there is a huge value in that.
Yeah. More and more so every day. I mean, we've talked about that on your value proposition, but yeah. Let's avoid the old and think new.
Yeah. Well, that's where it's fun for us with the training that we created was to do it in a way that it made accessibility more reachable for everybody.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs it.
Yeah.
So,
or will.
Right. Well, that's the hope. Cool. Good conversation. I appreciate that. Yeah, you bet.